Welcome back, riders. Today we have an incredibly unique coaster. Scratch that. This roller coaster feels more like a whole experience. I'm pretty excited to dive deep into this one. I'm pretty sure it's going to be my longest video. Number 17 of 25 Days of Coasters is F.L.Y at Phantasialand. As always, we will start with the stats and background. F.L.Y, or simply Fly, is located at one of the best amusement parks in the world, or I guess technically theme park, the world famous Phantasialand. Phantasialand is located in Brühl, Germany. Brühl is a suburb of Cologne and south of Dusseldorf. Phantasialand is famous for their extensive theming, which is already apparent in the pictures and will continue to be throughout the whole video. F.L.Y is a new generation flying coaster built by Dutch manufacturer Vekoma in 2020. Vekoma did a fantastic job revolutionizing the loading and unloading process of the flying coaster. Compared to Vekoma's older Flying Dutchman model or Bolliger and Mablart's flying model, Vekoma did a great job streamlining the process, which results in a much higher throughput. They advertised they could do 1,400 people per hour, which compared to like one of the older Flying Dutchmen or one of the B&M flying coasters is just absolutely nuts. Phantasialand is unique in that they have many restrictions when building attractions. Because of this, many are built into the ground and within structures, and F.L.Y is no different. F.L.Y is actually built within a resort hotel and can't be seen anywhere in the park besides the section of land it resides in if you're standing in there, called Rookburg. Because of the restrictions and nature of the ride, there are not many known statistics. Phantasialand themselves also kind of just keeps this ride almost like on the down low. They pretty much strike down any POV that surfaces on the internet, and they just don't produce a lot of stats for this ride. But out of what we do know, the ride features a top speed of only 48.5 miles per hour, and it has two inversions. F.L.Y holds the record of the world's longest flying coaster, but again, the actual length has actually been debated a little bit. It is somewhere between 4,055 feet and 4,265 feet. The ride is able to have such a long length because there are actually two launches on F.L.Y, making it the only flying coaster in the world with a launch, let alone two. I was able to ride F.L.Y 6 times across my 2 days at Phantasialand this past summer. I was actually at Phantasialand on 4th of July, and I definitely preferred it to the traditional fireworks and hot dogs back home. I think it's important to quickly go over the area of Rookburg before the ride experience on F.L.Y itself because they pretty much go hand in hand. F.L.Y is Rookburg, and Rookburg is F.L.Y. What I mean by that is, F.L.Y is a relatively compact coaster, and F.L.Y also takes up pretty much the entire square footage inches of Rookburg. There are no other rides in Rookburg. It's just F.L.Y in there. Rookburg is just as big as F.L.Y is. The theming when you ride F.L.Y doubles as the theming for Rookburg and is exceptionally well done. Phantasialand did a fantastic job with the theming, if you can't already see for yourself. I think the pictures serve more justice than I can describe in words. There was no nook or cranny that was left untouched with the theming. They even have special effects throughout the ride that are triggered when the coaster flies by, like steam or water effects, all that jazz. This is equally as cool to see on ride on F.L.Y versus just walking around the Rookburg land. Which I do want to quickly point out, one of the features or benefits that we had for staying in the Charles Lindbergh Hotel was being able to walk freely around Rookburg after the park was closed. I want to say it was for around 3 hours, maybe four, but during this time I had an absolute field day. I think I was out there for 2 hours just taking everything in, and I would gladly do it again in a heartbeat, just in awe the entire time, and especially looks great at night. This is how well the area and coaster are themed. And all of that praise is even before I mentioned one of my favorite parts of Rookberg and Fly, the soundtrack. There are 14 different IMAscore tracks that accompany Rookberg. They are all amazing. They are all epic and really set the mood. Pardon my German, but Der Polsch von Rookberg track specifically is hands down one of the best amusement park scores anywhere. I listen to it all the time. All the music is captivating and most certainly adds to the experience. Moving specifically into Fly, the experience begins with the queue. There's two halves to this. The first half is an extremely long walk until you get into the indoor queue. You walk up and down, over hills, through the woods to grandmother's house you go. It is much like American Eagle's queue at Six Flags Great America. This is probably the weakest themed area of Rootburg, which is still adequate, don't get me wrong, but it just kind of feels like you're walking through storage containers at points, like for a solid 5 minutes. That's how long this walk is. There's not much theming in the so-called storage containers. There is some sometimes, but they do give plenty of views of Fly and Wookberg, which is very awesome. So it really just kind of piggybacks off the already existing theming for Rookberg and Fly, but just being able to see it and get all these different angles while you're walking through the queue, it's definitely memorable. So even though, like, I guess the surface is, it just kind of feels like a storage container in sorts, there's plenty to see while you're walking through them still. Eventually, you make your way into the indoor queue, and this is pretty cool. There's a few very big screens with a themed story that eventually leads into the safety spiel and telling you how to use the lockers. I appreciated that they had some English subtitles. I think they also had German and French for these videos. There's also a cool animatronic in here, pictured here. It doesn't do all that much, but it's still cool to look at. That said, this room is not super big, but you will be standing here for a while. The way they like pulse people for the lockers, they take a bunch of people all at once. So you're probably going to be standing in one spot for a while in this room, but then once they start letting people in, you're probably going to get into the locker room. Fly uses wristbands that they give you to lock and unlock your locker. You have to ride with this too, which is something I've never seen before, and it works fine, no complaints or praise. After you pass the lockers, you do not have to wait much longer to get into the station. The station is completely enclosed and is dimly lit, with some lighting and effects where trains enter the station and dispatch. It's very pleasing on the eye. I guess the next minute or so could be considered spoilers, but I don't think they really are. But regardless, if you don't know everything about Fly and you want to go in a little more blindly, you could go ahead and skip until the picture on the screen changes. I'll give those people a few more seconds if they choose to do that. 3, 2, 1, safe, clean, fun. Okay, Fly is a flying coaster, but its loading process was completely overhauled compared to like the traditional flying coasters, and it is great. In the station, the track is actually rotated 90 degrees, and the seat is rotated in a way. I also think it's rotated 90 degrees. Don't quote me on that though. It's weird to describe, but it's rotated in a way alongside the track where you just sit down like a normal seat in the station. You move your legs into the leg restraint, which can be a little bit of a learning curve. I know my first time I wasn't exactly sure what to do. It's not as straightforward as the leg restraints on the B&M flyers, but I would say they're a little comfier. When you dispatch, there is a custom soundtrack specifically for the dispatch. I knew about the seating arrangement going into Fly, but I did not know that Fly has like a pre-show. When you dispatch and you have the soundtrack, you pass through theming elements, and they're pretty cool alongside the music. It's very epic and it gets you in the mood that you're about to do something epic. There's like these huge, like, I don't know if propaganda is like the right word, but there's these huge posters you pass in front of, and there's these like light up diagram things that I saw a lot of in Europe. I don't know how to describe them, but it was pretty cool. At the end of the tunnel, when the track and your seats rotate, they will move and rotate while you're moving, so that puts you in the flying position. So that's how you get from like the sitting in the station to the flying position. From this point, you are lined up with the first launch. I would say don't get super excited. This launch, alongside the second launch, are by no means powerhouses. They are very gradual and relatively forceless. I think forceless can be seen as having like a negative connotation when reviewing a ride, but I don't think that's the case for Fly. Don't get me wrong, the launches are, at the end of the day, they're relatively forgettable when thinking about Fly and the whole experience, but they are definitely still cool. Just to reiterate, this is the only launching flying coaster in the world. Just don't go in thinking you're gonna go take off like Kingda Ka or Max Force or something like that. I would say the second launch feels like even less of a launch than the first launch, but the key difference between the two is that the second launch is actually an uphill launch, while the first is not. So it's definitely really cool to launch upwards, because that is extremely rare on any coaster, let alone a flying coaster. I really debated describing Fly element by element, especially because I don't remember the layout, but there is a POV that has him take it down on YouTube right now, so I could if I wanted to, but I decided against it. In a way, Fly is repetitive, but it's almost like the best repetition ever. I will single out some specific moments, but Fly can pretty much be explained by grouping a lot of the elements together. I talked about this a little earlier, but nearly every part of Fly is interacting with something from Rookburg. Maybe you're flying through the hotel, or you're flying over water with water spouts going out, or flying right up against other buildings or roofs of buildings, or flying against the ground, or flying through structures, or flying through tunnels, or over buildings, all the while flying over and or under Fly's own track and supports, or even flying through the supports. This ride does it all, seriously. Both launches lead up to two moments that go through the hotel area. The first launch leads into a high overhang through the hotel. It's visually super cool. You level out and traverse the first inversion, pictured here, which is extremely close to one of the walkways in the hotel. I guess I should have said pictured here later. Anyways, the second launch leads into this like airtime hill turnaround where while going through the hotel. This is a great moment of airtime, and again, very visually cool, flying extremely close to the hotel. And I can't really think of any other rides where you're flying through hotels, so very cool. Fly actually has airtime, and a good amount of it too, especially specifically for a flying coaster. Airtime is a sensational feeling on a flying coaster. There are many points in the ride that rise up and then back down, like the aforementioned airtime hill after the second launch, but more so during the meat of the ride, you could just kind of see in the picture, there's a lot of moments where you just kind of rise up and then back down that gives some little floater here and there. And like I said, on a flying coaster, it's great. Last but certainly not least is one of the biggest surprises for me, the positive G's. This coaster is sneakily one of the best rides in the world for positive G's. This kind of goes hand in hand with the airtime section I talked about, but it's even more abundant. When you rise up and back down, you get a little airtime. But during like the entrance and especially the exit of those moments, you're just getting pummeled in positive G's. Fly is always turning left or right or something, almost like a collection of incomplete helixes or helixes? Question mark. And you're just getting bombarded with positive G's in most of them. It's not an overwhelming intensity like a pretzel loop on a B&M Flyer or the aforementioned Intimidator 305 from my 25 Days of Coasters. It's not like a shorter moment where it's like super, super crazy hard. It's just more consistent and abundant feeling of just being compressed in your seat. It is borderline too much, honestly, but it's freaking awesome at the same time. After every ride, I just felt drained, like I just like fought this battle, but in the same way that feeling like felt the best way possible. So that's all I've got for Fly at Phantasialand. This really is more of an experience than a roller coaster. I got plenty of pictures for this one, but if you want to see it in action and a more in-depth review, go check out Canopy Coaster's review in the description below. Have you been on Fly? Even if you haven't, what do you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. And I hope to see you all tomorrow. Push down, pull up, exit to the right. Hope you enjoyed the video, and go have your greatest day yet. Choo choo, bye!